Hey friends, Kevin here, and today we're going to take you and introduce you to Big Brutus. Now, Big Brutus is located in the southeast corner of Kansas, and there is this little part of Route 66 that juts through about 13 miles of that corner of Kansas. It's a detour off Route 66 of about 35 miles, but I think it's well worth it. Do you think it's well worth it?
It's well worth it.
Is it well worth it? It's well worth it to go see Big Brutus. Now, they're going to charge, it's about $8.75 for an adult, but let's get into showing you Big Brutus, and we'll talk about some of these fun facts along the way.
In 1/2 mile, navigate off-road.
Half a mile away.
Thing is indeed huge. Texas don't have one of these. Man, we just got a lonely pen down there in Southwest Virginia, don't we? In the back of the museum, when you come out the door, there is this really cool Big Brutus shuttle, which I assume can take you over there, but there's no one to run it, so obviously I'm going to have to do this myself. You know how to drive one of these? But there's a horn button in the floor. I wonder if it still works. Nope, horn button in the floor tore up. That's why they put the bike horn on it. She's going to whip out and make us walk. Always worried about me being arrested. So how big is Big Brutus? Big. Let's show you how big. My understanding is there was another one this large in Ohio, but it was dismantled. Luckily, this one in Kansas was saved for everybody to enjoy. It sounds like I'm out of breath. It's because I am, after coming up about 4 flights of these steps really fast. This is like being on a big battleship. So 2 giant 3,500 horsepower motors would have been mounted to this platform behind me. 7,000 horsepower. Those giant motors, when they then operated 13 other motors, which controlled everything that this fine piece of machinery was able to do. And while the motors may not be here any longer behind me, that whole winch assembly and cabling system is 25 pounds per foot, 800 feet of cable on each side in order to control what this did. Once upon a time, you were actually able to go all the way to the top of Big Brutus as part of the tour. You can't do that anymore. There's a story behind that, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Like I said, this is like being on a battleship. You're not going to see anything else like this in your life ever again. Especially if you have a shaved head like me, this orange tape is not enough. You really need to pad that with something. More about Big Brutus. The period of erection was from June 62 to May 1963. Which is odd because I thought you were supposed to call your doctor for it.
To avoid long-term injury, seek immediate medical help for an erection lasting more than 4 hours.
Now, Big Brutus, they started working on in 1962, bringing the parts in, which consisted essentially of 150 railroad cars full of equipment. They completed it. It was in service in 1963, and it was used until 1974. As a matter of fact, it pretty much ran continuously that entire 11-year period. And they designed this to be larger than one that they had been using since 1938. And this one had about 3 times the capacity of what it was able to do in one move or in one scoop. Now, as far as the steel that this monster is made out of, pure American steel. The weight of this thing is 11 million pounds. The shovel alone is taller than a 15-story office building. How big is this bucket? Let me try to give you an idea. This is me standing in this bucket. And if you follow this channel, you know that I drive around the country in one of the vehicles I use is a 19-foot converted camper van. You should be able to park 2 of these in here with no problem at all. Each section of the little track it rides around on is 2,000 pounds. Check out how thick these plates actually are. The cable used to supply power to Big Brutus. Now you could run some solar panels off that thing. Now, back to why you were no longer able to go all the way to the top of Big Brutus. And you were only allowed to go inside now. It seems that back in roughly 2010, while they were closed, I'm assuming for the holidays, a gentleman, a 49-year-old professional gentleman, he was a dentist is my understanding, decided it would be a good idea for him to go and base jump from the top that you used to be able to walk up to and get to. And if you're not familiar with base jumping, it's basically where people jump off of buildings or other structures with specialized equipment and a special parachute to come down. The best they can figure, they being the investigators, is that he made it to the top, and between the cold, ice, whatever else was going on that day, that he managed to slip and fall off before he was ready to jump off. So he did get to partially deploy his chute on the way down, but it didn't save him and he died. So after taking that black eye in the media, the board of directors of the company that owns this decided that they would just shut that part off from any other tours. So they welded the door shut inside, so there is no longer access that there used to be up to the very tip top of that. So the tour is still worthwhile, it's still fascinating, but unfortunately for over the last decade or so, we haven't got to have the full tour because of one individual making a bad decision. That thing will give a whole new meaning, way to build a tiny house. But if you're interested in things like this, it's certainly worth it. You're not going to see anything else like this in your life ever again. There was one other one of these, is my understanding, that was in Ohio, and it has been dismantled. So this is the only one of these left.